I do. My favorite website is called Things Organized Neatly, and it's just
we have a lot of fun. We're really fun guys.
It's nothing but pictures of people's like yarn drawers, but organized very well. Check it out. I know every one of you is laughing, and I'm telling you, you'll like it. It hits my pleasure sensors. I'm like, ooh, colors. But no, another version of fun, and I think short stories have this. So you have this sort of the idea of like what we might, again, virtuosic sort of language play. But then in terms of plot and structure, there's a type of fun that I think short stories are particularly strong at, and that would be, like colloquially speaking, like it would just be the twist.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a big fan of stories that sort of subvert my expectations or take me suddenly, and of course the famous, of course, Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, classic twist, I'm trying to think of some of the other more...
Henry.
Henry, of course.
Twists.
Yeah. The Gift of the Magi. Almost all the kind of the big, The Lady or the Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of heavily anthologized short stories in some ways are because they have this sort of fun. They really take us somewhere we didn't expect. Do you kind of partake in that as well? How do you, when we describe fun, I mean, you don't have to do it like I did with a surgical precision or like that.
I love a good taxonomy.
Yeah, thanks, bro. Do you
Etymology
like
is
twists?
big
I guess
too.
I should have just been like, hey, you like twists?
In my martini. Yeah. I guess it's too early for that.
Or Bartolome is another example of somebody who uses Calvino, Borges. They're taking the short story and going, I'm going to do that thing, the experiment that a novel simply can't pull off.
They're bending kind of the ability of literature, not just the short story form. Because what's happening is they're creating like a magic. And if you think of magic as surface tension, you can put a lot of water.
Oh, look at you, Mr. Scientist.
Yeah, you can. I mean, sorry, the consistency of a dream is fiction, and the surface tension. No,
please.
But
surface
if you
tension.
think of like the magic of literature as surface tension, you can fit a lot of water on a dime and create, nearly a whole hemisphere of water on this dime before it starts to pour out. And if the dime is the vehicle, so the structure, the story, the form, the magic of literature then would be the water, and you can get a nice dome with a novel too, but in a cup of water, the amount of dome to the amount is less because the magic starts to collapse on itself. Experiments start to collapse on themselves because they are necessarily full of holes.
Right.
All of Calvino's great short novels are full of holes, and they can't be long novels because that invites you thinking too much. Yeah. A novel, precisely because of its length, can't be infinite. Yeah. Which, somewhat paradoxically, because a short story is so short, it goes on into the horizon indefinitely because it doesn't end, it leaves the reader. A novel ends, a short story just leaves the reader, and everything else remains possible forever. And that's my idea of fun.
I agree with you. For a long time, I used to, when people asked, well, who's your favorite writer, I would say, there are no writers, there's only Italo Calvino.
That's such I unfortunately live that mantra. That's not good.
There's no such thing as it. Right? He's the great one as far as I'm concerned. You described it perfectly. I couldn't agree more.
But what's fun for you then?
In the novel fun?
Yeah, because a novel, it has its own funs.
Yeah. Now we see, but in a mirror darkly, right? Like it's a novel is the closest I think you can get to knowing someone, and I think the fun of that kind of intimacy is delightful. It isn't in the taxonomic, right, or little chart. It's not on the funny haha side,
right?
But it is the reason I think I would write. I would aspire to write short stories, and in fact.
I would aspire to write novels.
No, I think they're such different skill sets, and as my entire reading is short stories, and so, but the novel, that's not true, it's not my entire reading, but I admire them because there's something that type of fun is almost elusive to me. Like, that's the magic I don't know how to do. Whereas I think a novel's play is also, it's a longer form piece, and so you can really iterate on a joke.
Yeah.
If we were going to continue with the comedy metaphor, then, the sort of the great one-liner, the great setup and payoff, that's the short story. There are comedians, however, who are like storytelling comedians. You know, they're going to take you for a ride for 30 minutes, and it starts to unravel. It starts to enliven. It starts to even, you know, at times the same joke it will make you laugh and make you cry. And that actually is the proper, what I think of in my head as the proper difficult aspect of a novel is, can I say the same sentence and make you laugh with it and then make you cry with it? That's what I'm trying to do. And then can I, because I've held, you start to play the, you know, as you said, the audience takes on a much more active role with a short story. I totally agree. In the novel form, I actually think it's a little bit more of a passenger. They're a lot more of a passenger, and it's the author's job a little bit more to mold the experience. And in that molding, I am often attempting to do things they're surprised by. Like I'm often trying to get them, I want them to laugh and cry on the same page.
Yeah.
So not even, the same joke might be 200 pages apart, but in that same page, I want them to take that ride. And I can't do that. It's harder, I should say, to pull that off in a short story because to pull that off in one page, I'm going to need their trust.
Right.
So I might spend 50 pages gaining that trust, if only so that they'll let me try something and come with me somewhere.
Right.
So it's a different form of experimentation.
It's also so much more of a setup, and I think digressions are where you can hide a lot of surprising niches in a novel. I hate using the word sprawling because it kind of, to me, it always has the connotation of like, bleh.
Yeah.
Novels are more sprawling inherently.
But that familiarity of, you know, when you walk into a room, I mean, so many people love certain like TV shows, long-running shows for the same reason. Cheers.
Yeah, everybody knows your name.
The familiarity of, after 100 pages, I can give the audience the equivalent of a look, and they know what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
They know, and we know each other. And that is a different kind of fun, because when you go to a party with your spouse, and someone says something that reminds you of something, which I gave you in a digression, you know, 40 pages ago, but and it reminds you, and you look at each other, there's that kind of humor is so delightful. But fundamentally, I agree with you, there is a law of fun. Literature's job is to be that, and so I would never be in a form or in a tone or a genre that I was fundamentally thinking, well, this is vegetables and they got to eat it.
No, because it becomes a dead form at that point.
Yeah. So that's on that side. That's the fun I find in the novel. I often find, you know, my favorite novelists that's what they're pulling off.
Yeah.
And so.